Hello,
Hi,
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, doing great. Describe who you are, what you do.
So I think that the best introduction is that little rap video that I sent you.
Okay,
Have you been able to watch it?
I did. I did.
Because it kind of, instead of having a lecture for 10 minutes, it kind of puts it all together in terms of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I can also do it in a more verbal form.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm curious. So I watched your little rap video and I know that you created this, but I'm curious on like a deeper level. What exactly does it do? What exactly is brain upgrade?
So Brain Upgrade is a new methodology that is based on cutting edge neuroscience and also on the research of other people and also my extensive experience of using mind body connection for over 30 years in individual and group sessions. And through the practice, I came to the conclusion that there is one solution for everything, and that is organized brain. So that's why my weekly video show on Tuesdays, it's called One Solution for Everything, because I talk about different aspects of what it takes to organize your brain and what it will do for you. So essentially what it does, it unlocks your potential. We can talk about it in a few different ways. This is the way I'm going to be talking about it today. Brain upgrade is a way to organize your brain so that you have more access to all of you. And there is a huge nonverbal intelligence that you have, that we all have, that we don't really consistently are able to access. So some people access it through dreams or intuition. Some people are psychic and they just can tune into that. But in terms of getting results and moving forward in life, really, we don't have a consistent way of tapping into that. So through my own research and studies and learning from a lot of very smart people, I developed a new way of doing it. I just want to emphasize I didn't create all of it because I learned from a lot of very smart people, but I put it together in a new way and added some of my own techniques, some of my own insights. And that's why it's called Brain Upgrade, because it upgrades your brain so that you have all of you to work with when you are trying to make decisions and create solutions. One or two more things on that subject. So the reason I call it one solution for everything is because I came to the conclusion that the only reason why things don't work in people's lives is because the brains get disorganized under stress. And everything is stressful. Seeing people, especially certain people, is stressful. Moving forward is stressful. Eating certain foods creates tremendous amount of stress in the body. There are all kinds of stresses, and those stresses disorganize the brain. The brain is not just the structure in your head. The brain is actually a communication network extended throughout the body. And when it gets disorganized, you lose contact. The different parts of the brain stop talking to each other, and you are unable to access all of your potential. And when you organize your brain, it gives you access to more of you. So you think better, you think more clearly, you see things, possibilities that you haven't seen before, and you can change your behavior and your habits much, much faster than with any other method. So this is what it actually does.
Oh, okay. So are we talking about our intuition, or are we talking about raising awareness, or are we tapping into our subconscious? Is there another, or
It's
is it a
all
combination?
of that plus much more.
Oh,
All of
okay.
that plus much more.
Okay. All right. I'm excited.
I think you understand that your body has its own inner intelligence. I think you understand that if you get hurt, you heal in a particular order. Let's say even such a simple thing like a cut in your finger, your body is smart enough to put the skin on top and not on the bottom. It just has that intelligence. It knows how to maintain your physiological balance, which is extremely complicated. If you start learning physiology and biochemistry of what's going on, it's extremely complicated. But you have that intelligence built in. So your body knows how to do that. This is part of your inner intelligence. Your body knows how to heal, but you don't have a good access to that information because we don't have a good way, consistent way of communicating with our bodies about that. Another part of your inner intelligence is your emotional intelligence. Most people don't realize that you have a whole part of your brain devoted to emotions. That requires a very specific way of working, which is part of the process that I developed. And it also is a part of your inner intelligence. Those parts of your intelligence are nonverbal. They work on the nonverbal level. So unlike what a lot of other experts teach, your subconscious mind is not a repository of repressed feelings and memories. I don't even know whether there is such a thing as subconscious mind. I call it your inner intelligence, which is something that is some part of you that is much smarter and has access to a lot more information than your conscious mind. Once you tap into that intelligence, you can find solutions much faster. And that's what we are going to be doing in your individual session. And this is what I teach people in my group classes, because I think that is just completely revolutionary. Once you learn how to get in touch with that part of you, it just completely changed people's lives. And, you know, I have a lot of stories about that, which I'll be happy to share along the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So like it's very exciting, and I've only learned about the true value of emotional intelligence as of a few years ago, and I've studied into it, and I've noticed the level in which some people have it and some people don't. So that fascinates me.
Well, I've studied a lot of, I'm a very emotional person, so I was looking as I was going through different personal growth modalities when I was much younger and just in the beginning of my journey. I attended tremendous number of workshops, conferences, read books, talked to experts, and so on. And nobody really, even people who teach about emotional intelligence, they don't really have a good answer to a number of questions about emotions. So I eventually figured out my own solution and also my own way of working with emotions. So we all have a potential for emotional intelligence, but it's based in that emotional part of the brain. And we don't develop that emotional part of the brain because it develops through being acquainted with and expressing your emotions. And what did you hear when you were a little child about your emotions?
Typically keep them in, right?
Exactly.
You know, if you're sad in a store and you're whining, you know, like be quiet.
Right. So this is where this part of your brain is called the limbic system. And the limbic development pretty much stopped at those early ages because you were consistently told not to feel sad or scared or angry. Don't be too demanding. Don't be selfish and things like that. And then, you know, we just shut down that part of ourselves. And unfortunately, what that does is later on, it shows up as very out of balance emotional expression. So people need to relearn how to work with emotions so that you can develop your limbic system and you become much more emotionally intelligent.
So it kind of be like, you know, when people say, I always bottle things up. What they're doing is they're going along with what they've learned when they were younger. They're taking those emotions and suppressing them. And then, like you said, when we get older, something triggers it. And then everything is so off balance and bottled up and compressed that it just like comes out as a wave of who knows.
Who knows? Exactly. It's completely unpredictable.
So you're actually showing us how to recapture and prioritize and monetize and generalize and distort and create words and meanings and feelings behind this.
Not to monetize, but get acquainted with that part of you and learning what to do with it, because nobody teaches you what to do with it, and that leads to lack of communication, because communication skills really work well when you have dissolved your emotional charge. people don't know how to dissolve their emotional charge other than yelling or bottling it down. There is a systematic way you can do that, and that makes communication skills much more effective. And that's one of the things I teach. So going back to people who teach about emotional intelligence, that those teachings essentially amount to self-control and empathy. Empathy, I understand. Of course, we want, that's, however, it can go overboard. A lot of my clients, especially women, have excess of empathy for others. So they get very involved in helping others, they are compassionate towards others, and they neglect their own needs. So, that's not very emotionally intelligent, even though that is considered part of healthy emotional intelligence. Another problem with that is also that the self-control part, as I was reflecting on everything that was being taught about that, of course, self-control is important, but based on what you were just saying, because things are so bottled down, it's very hard to control them when they want to come out. So that's one thing. And the second thing is that it's much easier for people who are emotional to develop self-control than for people who are not emotional to get in touch with their emotions. And that is a really serious problem, that people don't know what they feel, and therefore they don't know what to do with their feelings. And it doesn't mean that the feelings don't affect them, but they don't know what to do because they are not aware of them. So there is, again, a systematic way that you can get in touch with your feelings. There is a process which you can use, which I teach in a particular workshop, which is currently called How to Resolve Your Emotional Issues Without Talking About Them for Hours. It's a systematic process where you can learn how to get in touch with your emotions, what to do with them, and how to create solutions.
Well, see, this is interesting because we talk about we're putting into circumstances of stress every day. Things happen, and then it's how we take those emotions and we bottle them, and also those feelings. Now, what about something that's an extenuating circumstance, such as, like, let's just say my car accident. I was in a horrific car accident. Every picture that I showed to anybody was like, oh, you should be dead. Like, that person is dead. And I was like, no, that person is right here.
Right.
Now, what about some of the feelings? So like last night I was laying in my bed and like, I had my night mask on. I was ready to go to sleep. And then all of a sudden, like, I was getting like feelings and like visions and dreams of my time in the hospital, because when I try to think back on it, I don't remember that much. So honestly, I think it was my brain distorting the whole experience of me in the hospital, because it was all traumatic. Like even the people that were over me that were supposed to be guiding and helpful and stuff, they weren't so much. So I just had like a lot of my whole experience in the hospital and the accident was very traumatic. So I feel like my brain tried to suppress some of that. Now I don't remember consciously being like, I don't want to remember this, like hanging on, like squeezing my hands, white knuckling and being so angry or anything at any given point. Right. So I feel like I had a pretty calm attitude, even coming out of the car. I had to tell the EMTs and the firefighters how to get me out. So I never lost consciousness. And then in the hospital, I had to tell people what to do and how to do it, because, they didn't know the extent of my limitations, really. So like both my legs were broken. So, one guy would come in and my boot was moving my leg because it had to be moved constantly. And the other leg was down. And he just assumed that the other leg was fine because it wasn't in the machine that kept it moving. So like he just go to grab my leg. So I was always on guard. I was always having to try to protect my own body and like protect my space. And I don't remember a lot of it.
Well, I think what you're describing is now it's called PTSD, right? It's a particular type of rewiring of the brain, but it can be gradually wired back to work in a healthy way. And there are specialists who specialize in trauma. I don't specialize in trauma, but I have worked with several clients who have been traumatized. And as a matter of fact, almost everybody not to be in this, people don't have to be in this kind of very dramatic and tragic car accident. It's enough to be abused as a child, and that trauma stays in your body, and it will surface in different ways. Sometimes it will surface in unexplained brutal rage. Sometimes it will explode into a paralyzing fear. Sometimes it will be into this intrusive thoughts and images. These are all, faulty wirings that happened, maybe not faulty because they all serve self-preservation, but they are not serving you at the moment. And there is this method that I use, as much as we don't focus specifically on trauma, but if the trauma comes up in your process, there are different activities that will help you diminish the impact or rewire some of your thoughts or emotions so that you will have more control over what you're doing now. And you will be gradually free from those, because one of the reasons why you have those recurring thoughts, there is a part of you that is trying to get your attention to get healed. And so there is nothing wrong with that. It actually serves a purpose. The problem is that most people don't know how to heal it. And you will just end up being stuck with those recurring thoughts and feelings. But once you start going through the process, those things will gradually change.
Okay. Okay. Very cool. So, well, I guess I'll wait and see the process. I was going to ask some more questions.
So the process has to do with, as I said, your inner intelligence is nonverbal. And where is it? It's in your body, because where else could it be? This is actually a funny question I used to ask in different presentations, which is, where is your subconscious mind? Have you ever thought about that? Because people talk about your subconscious mind, like, where is it?
Well, I believe that your subconscious it does a number of functions, right? And
it's not about function. Where is it?
Yeah, in your brain.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's somewhere in your brain, right? And your brain is in your body. So your subconscious mind ultimately is in your body. And that's why it's not a mind. It's a body mind. And it's not, as I said, I don't believe in what other people teach about the subconscious mind, because a lot of it has to do with, it's your inner intelligence. It's your inner nonverbal intelligence that knows where you've been. Because when we go through traumatic experiences, it's very easy for the mind to go somewhere else. As a matter of fact, it's a very well-known defense mechanism. And people in different traumatic experiences report that, including women who've been raped. They just dissociate and the mind goes somewhere else. But your body has to go through it. So the body remembers. And because it's in your body, you cannot resolve it with your mind. You have to engage your body in very specific ways. So my system consists of very gentle, but very targeted physical and emotional activities that have to do with rewiring different parts of whatever comes up to be rewired at the moment.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
So we start with two very simple physical activities that will give you an idea about what we are going to do, and it will give you an experience about how it works. So the first exercise, it's part of the sequence I teach for stress release. So I would like you to evaluate where you are right now in terms of stress.
Okay.
So if you want, you can share if something is stressful. And if you don't want to share, just evaluate how that stress affects your body. Where do you feel it? And in what way? How does it affect your emotions? What do you actually feel on the emotional level? And how does it affect your mind? Is your mind clear? Is it chaotic? Is it, what is your mind doing when you're in this kind of state of stress? So take a moment to evaluate these things. You don't have to tell me at the moment what you're observing. but I would like you to make a mental note and then give yourself a number on a scale from 0 to 10 about how stressed you are. 10 will be very stressed and 0 is completely not stressed.
I think I'd say I don't go below a 4. And I'd say right now I'm probably a 6 or a 6.5, somewhere in there.
Okay, so we'll just do one very simple activity, which is called self-hug, and then we'll see whether that had any effect on your number. So this is how you do self-hug. You cross your ankles, and then you reach forward with your arms like that.
Okay.
Turn your thumbs down, cross your wrists and interlace your fingers, bend your elbows and rest them on your chest. You can lean back. Close your eyes and gently touch the tongue behind your upper teeth. And I'm going to set my timer for 1.5 minutes. And I'm going to do this together with you, but I'm not going to close my eyes because I'm conducting a session. I should be present. All right, that was 1.5 minutes. So uncross your feet, put your feet on the floor, and uncross your hands, touch your fingertips together like that. And you can rest them in your lap or on the desk, whatever you have in front of you. And we'll do that again. We'll take a minute to just sit like that. Okay, that was 1 minute. So that was self-hug, these two segments, these two positions. So I would like you to go back to evaluating the physical experience of stress, emotional experience of stress, mental experience of stress. Observe what's different and then give yourself a number.
I noticed some tension release.
Okay.
I noticed I noticed in my shoulders and my legs.
Okay, wonderful.
And then I also noticed that probably my mid back down to the tailbone got really hot.
Okay,
It got very, very hot. And my mind didn't move. It didn't feel like it moved as fast, if that makes sense.
yes.
So
So
I would have to say I am probably around 4 to 4.5. Yeah.
okay,
So
so it's 2 points lower,
yeah.
starting
In
with
2
6.5, right? So
Yeah.
it's about 30% decrease in 2.5 minutes
Yeah.
without any mental effort, without any talking yourself out of stress. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
This is how it works. You just do these activities and they change how your physiology works.
Mm.
Your mind is an outcome of what happens on a body level. So your physiology really regulates how your mind works, not the other way around. And
Mm.
that's how we can get really fast results.
Okay, so this what we're doing here, these poses, these movements, the breathing, all of that stuff, it's helped to stimulate the neurons to work in different ways, or is that kind of
It's
a
not
little bit?
just neurons. Remember, the brain is all of the body, all of the brain is a communication network. So it's all the electrochemical transmissions and connections that happen flowing throughout the body. And that has to do with not only the brain in your head, it has to do with your heart and your thyroid, with your gut and everything else. So when you do something that's calming, it affects all of your internal organs, which you experience as less tension, less stress, right? And that's how it works. So it rewires, when you do this frequently enough and long enough, it rewires your whole system to be less prone to stress reactions. You become more resilient.
So this is something that you want to incorporate into a regiment, say like every morning when you wake up, compared to when you're put in an extraordinary situation.
Yes, it's a very handy. I call this part of I call it daily brain maintenance regimen. So just like people learn how to wash their hands and brush their teeth, you need to do certain things to maintain your brain. And this is one of the exercises that helps you stay calm. So it's good to do it in the morning. It's good to do it in the afternoon. It's good to do it in the evening. It only takes a minute or 2 minutes. So when I find when I get tired or when I get agitated, I just do this exercise and it just helps me relax. So even sometimes even clears my mind. And there are, of course, many, many other activities that we do as well in the individual sessions, but this is one of those things that will be really helpful to incorporate as a daily routine. So this is the second very important brain organizing movement. It's called crossover or cross crawl, and I call it magic moves for a number of reasons. And let's do that right now. So I would like you to stand up.
Okay.
And this is particularly good for clarity of mind. So I would like you to think about something that I don't know, where you don't experience clarity, where you would like to experience more clarity. Okay, and let's do maybe about, I don't know, 15 of these moves in each direction. So let's do the one in the first picture. So yeah, you're going to alternate. You don't have to hold it. You just keep alternating.
My hip is cracking.
So the purpose of this movement is to reconnect the right and left brain hemispheres to work together. Brain hemispheres control different functions. They are complementary but opposite.
Okay.
So now do the movement in the second picture. So touch your heel behind your back with the opposite hand. And when you use opposite arm and leg, you are physically and immediately stimulating the connection between right and left brain, which allows you to achieve what I call brain coherence, which is here on the screen, or harmony for having thinking and feeling details in the big picture and many other functions available to you at the same time. So do a few more of these. So this front and back movement are based on crossing the midline. Midline is where the brain hemispheres have to meet and your eyes have to meet. And this is where you can use both hemispheres at the same time. If they don't work together, which is what happens under stress, the midline becomes a barrier and it's hard to cross. So I've often seen people not being able to touch their opposite knee, as simple as it is. So now we are going to do the third movement, starting with feet together, arms by your sides, and then extend one diagonal. So arm and leg to the opposite side, leg, bring it together to the center, and then extend the other diagonal. And keep repeating that. Okay, so as I said, this is called cross crawl or crossover. And how is your mind? How is your clarity?
I feel good.
Is there any difference?
I feel focused.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
So again, doing like a minute or two of this very simple activity saves you a lot of mental effort trying to focus. You do this and you feel focused.
Yeah.
This is the essence of what we do. This is your first experience that you can activate and organize your brain through these simple activities, and you immediately feel a difference in certain things.
I definitely do.
Okay, that's very good. So now we are going to move to the next part of the process, which is, as I mentioned before, we don't have a consistent tool of working with our inner intelligence. But there is a very magical tool that some people developed, which is called testing a muscle response. So testing a muscle response has become pretty corrupted because people use it incorrectly. And here I need to talk about my experience with testing a muscle response and where I come with it, where I come in that field. So I'm a matriarch of the field of specialized kinesiology. Specialized kinesiology is a system, it's a variety of different systems that developed out of a very simple method of balancing muscles. So using certain reflexes on the body to stimulate muscles to become instantly stronger. So I came across this technique in 1970. That was my second year of being in New York. I didn't know anything about anything, but I was through a different chain of coincidences or different chain of situations. I was exploring different holistic modalities, and the center there where I was actually studying for yoga certification, because I was teaching yoga at that time, they brought all kinds of healers from all modalities. So I studied herbology and iridology and shiatsu and acupressure and everything else. But this one technique actually captivated me completely because it was unbelievable. You could just press certain things on the body and your muscles became instantly stronger. So it looks unbelievable. And if we were working in person, I would show it to you. But I have I recently recorded a video where I demonstrate that with the client, so you can see how that works. So because it looks unbelievable, I asked the instructor to test it on me, and I could not deny that I felt a difference. So I said, I've got to learn this. So I learned it. And as it happened, there was a first instructor training that was coming to New York shortly afterwards. So I became one of the first instructors on the East Coast to teach this. And it worked like magic because I didn't know prior to that, I really didn't know anything about anatomy, but I learned through learning the system. And with my limited knowledge, I still was able to help people release pain and tension very, very rapidly and recover from injuries. So that became foundation of my practice. But later on, in addition to balancing muscles, we started to use muscles, testing a muscle response for, first of all, we started to use it for nutrition. And many people then gravitated towards that because it was very powerful to use one muscle response to help people determine whether they needed a particular supplement or not. Other people gravitated towards using muscle response for different energy imbalances. So we started to use muscle testing and one muscle response for either nutrition or energy imbalances or yes or no. And that became very popular and people started to use it incorrectly. So by now, all the many years later, we are in 25th iteration of whatever people have been teaching, and people don't understand that muscle testing is a very subtle art and that muscle response, I even heard absurd things such as that the body doesn't lie and therefore muscle testing never lies. So I want to use this platform to clarify that this is completely wrong. The body doesn't lie is actually a statement that Martha Graham made about a body of dancers and a body that we have that expresses something. Martha Graham was why I came to New York. I was studying in the Martha Graham School in New York, which led to a lot of other things. But this is what she said, and it didn't have to do with muscle testing at all. Muscle testing did not exist at that time. She was using that to illustrate that the fact that the body will always, if you look at people's bodies, you know where they are at. So it has nothing to do with muscle testing, but people use that to justify muscle response, and they think that it's always right. It's absolutely not always right. It's very easily muscle response, testing a muscle response is a very subtle discipline. And if you want to do it correctly, you really have to do you have to learn a lot about balancing muscles first. Because muscle testing kind of is like a communication between people. And just like I can very easily override someone with my verbal input, I can very easily override someone with my nonverbal input. So I've seen people do that in very, very wrong ways. So you may have seen that as well. This is as an introduction in terms of, we are going to be using muscle testing. Muscle testing, if it's used correctly, it's a really wonderful tool to communicate with your inner intelligence. So if we were working together in person, I would be testing your arm or leg to show a difference. So have you experienced muscle testing yourself?
Well, I would say yes, but I'm not sure if I did it right or wrong. So it'd probably just be safer for me to say no.
So I'm going to play a video, a very brief segment of a video, which I did recently with one of my students, one of my practitioner trainees who's learning how to use my system. And we did a little demo of how muscle balancing actually works. The founder of the Radical Rapid Results system, and I'm here with Patty, who's going to help me demonstrate how you can quickly release tension and improve range of motion with just a few tweaks And this is what I was referring to in my video. This is a technique that allowed me to shorten my work week. And let's start with evaluating, Patty, where do you feel tension?
My trapezoids, like right here, is where I hold all of my stress. And I think being at the computer every day, this is where it all resides. So often leading me to have like neck pain and being tight in this particular area.
That's right. I think that we can all relate to that, spending a lot of time in front of the computer. And so how high is your tension right now?
Well, I always gauge it by whether I can move my neck and how much I can move my neck. So it's pretty stiff right now. So I have limited range of motion. I would say on a scale of like 1 to 10, I'm at 7.
Okay, thank you. So if I were still doing massage, which I did in the beginning of my career, I would then probably get Patty to lie down on a table, and I would like really forcefully massage these muscles to release. And that's why I want to show you a shortcut, because there is a way to do that with much less effort. And this is called muscle balancing. And we are going to start with two muscles called supraspinatus. So hold your arm in this position, and I'm going to push in towards the center. Say push, push. And then we of course test the other side as well. Say push, push. Okay, so these are what we call switched off muscles, and we can switch them on, which means improve supply of energy to these muscles by doing very specific reflex points on the body. Each muscle has a series of reflex points that make them instantly stronger, and we are going to see how that's going to work with these muscles and what it's going to do for Patty with her neck tension. So I did one side, the other side. Okay, so hold your arm up and say push, push. So I'm pushing very hard. How does that feel?
It feels a lot stronger that I didn't even feel like you were doing anything when you were pushing.
Say push, push. Okay, so when I test again, I usually put a lot of force into that just to help the person feel that it's actually them, because people often say like, oh, you're not pushing as hard. But the secret of this method is that when the muscles are switched on, you don't put a lot of effort. You don't put any effort. My clients don't put any effort into holding them in those positions. And that releases tension from other parts of the body. So I'm just going to fast forward to the end. So I did a few more muscles and then points. So let's get back to Patty. So how is your range of motion? How is your tension?
So I can move my neck a lot more than I was able to before. So that's amazing to me, because I feel like, I mean, you did things obviously, but it wasn't a lot of time. But my range of motion, like I feel like I can get a lot closer to my shoulder now. So this feels a lot better. I feel like my neck is longer. I feel like my shoulders have dropped. So I mean, if you give yourself enough, the tension was at 7 before. Where would you put it now? I'd say I'm at like a 2.
Okay,
yeah, I can move a lot better now.
Great. So this is the result that you can get in just a few minutes, balancing a few muscles and decreasing tension from 7 to 2. Okay, so this is what captivated me. This is what it looks like when you balance muscles.
Yeah.
And it's a very secret art. Very few people know how to do that.
Now, why is that?
It just has not gained very much popularity, but I'm using that as part of my practitioner training. So if I'm successful, hopefully when I'm successful, there will be a lot more people doing it because it's a significant part of my practice. And I even learned how I can do that remotely by guiding people to do it themselves. So anyway, this is where I started. This is what captivated me. And gradually, people moved away from balancing muscles to just testing one muscle. So if we were working in person, I would use your arm and we will test the resistance and get the yes or no answers. But because we are remotely, I need to test myself, and that looks really weird, but it still works.
Okay.
So this is also, by the way, it's not easy to test yourself accurately. That's why you need to have a lot of experience to balance other people's muscles, to can actually rely, you can trust yourself to be neutral and not swayed by whatever I think I should be feeling. So I'm going to use the leg muscles because leg muscles are more accurate if you test yourself.
Okay.
So it looks like this. I'm going to use this is a quadriceps muscle.
Okay.
So when we do a session, I usually check whether I am in balance, because I need to be in balance in order to help you. So this is what it looks like. I'm testing for 4 basic circuits.
Okay.
One is we test whether people have enough water by pulling on hair. And I will not go into why we do that, but anyway, that's what we do. So I'm okay for that. Then we test for self-hug by doing a brush down, which should switch off a muscle, and brush up, which would switch on the muscle, and it works. Then I'm testing for 3 master acupressure points, and that works. And then I test for, there is a reflex for cross crawl, and it's switched on. So I'm in balance.
Okay.
So I need to establish responses for yes or no, so we can find out whether I can surrogate for you. So
Okay.
let's get a yes and let's get a no. So can I surrogate for Brent? So let me explain to you how that works, because a friend of mine asked me, and I thought it was a really good question because we don't really know how that works, but you can think about it. My comparison is like, if I'm going to be your IT person, you're going to give me your password or a way to remotely log into your computer. And I'll be able to, just with a very simple operation, I'll be able to log into your computer and see what's in it, right? So this is what I do, essentially. You gave me a password to your computer by doing the surrogating. So when I test myself, I will now be reading responses for you. The difference with that password metaphor is that it works both ways. So not only I can read your files, but you can read my files. And that's why your inner intelligence can select from what I know, what is going to be helpful for you.
Okay.
And that's my explanation of how we can work remotely.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So testing Brent, water. You need to get some water. It's better, but not completely. So get a little bit more water.
More water? Okay. Finish the bottle.
Okay, good. So now the response is strong.
Okay.
Now I'm testing for whether we've done enough self-hug. So it should switch off going down. It's switched off. It should switch on going up. It's switched on. So self-hug is in balance. I'm testing for the acupressure master switches, which I haven't shown you. I'll show them to you another time. That's balanced. And this is a reflex for cross crawl, and it's switched off. So we need to do some more cross crawl. Let's find out what's going to make it strong. Front doesn't make it strong. Back doesn't make it strong. Side to side. So we now need to do, need to stand up, and we'll do a little bit more of that side to side movement.
Okay.
And
it's like this.
Yeah. Okay, let's check if that was enough. So you can stop. And I'm testing that point. And now the response is switched on.
Okay.
So we work on goals. So we need to set up a goal. So say, I have a goal for this session.
You want me to say that?
Yeah.
I have a goal for this session.
And the response is switched on, which means a yes. So now let's look at what is your goal? What would you like to change or improve in your life right now?
I guess reverting back to the beginning of this call when we talked about strengthening our emotional intelligence.
Okay, so what would that mean for you? What does it mean for you to strengthen your emotional intelligence?
I guess when put in extraordinary situations or different levels of stress, things that I can't control, etc., have a more calm, practical approach to it.
So are you talking just abstractly, or there are some specific situations where you would like to be calmer?
Well, I mean, I can think of some times, but they weren't, they were pretty abstract. Driving tends to be one that's fairly consistent.
Okay, so something to do with driving. What happens when you drive?
There's some people that do some pretty dumb things on the road, and
Right.
that does frustrate me quite a bit.
Okay, so first of all, so say my goal has to do with driving. So say that.
Oh, my goal has to do with driving.
And that response, the muscle response confirms that. So, all right, so how would you like to feel like driving? How would you like to drive?
I'd like to drive and just be calm and be less reactive, I guess.
So when you're less reactive, what would you use as a description of the actual behavior?
When I'm less reactive, what would be composed, calm?
Okay, so say my goal is to be calm and composed when I'm driving.
My goal is to be calm and composed when I'm driving.
And the response is yes, so that's a good goal. So I usually ask a couple of qualifying questions. So
Okay.
Is this the best goal? The answer is yes. Is there something to add? No. So then once we decide what the goal is, we set up a series of measurements. And the first measurement is to state the goal in the first person. So say, I'm calm and composed when I'm driving.
I'm calm and composed when I'm driving.
So the response is switched off because obviously you're not, since this is what we are going to be working on. So then I write it down in that form. All right, so that was the first measurement. The next measurement is obviously going to be driving. So we do a lot of role plays in these sessions because there are a lot of behaviors that people can just go out and do, but we can role play them. And role plays are very, they essentially activate whatever circuitry within needs to be activated to tell your body what you need to reprogram. So pretend that you are, so let's do it from the beginning. Let's say you get into the car. Mm-hmm. So you stand up and.
Oh.
Yeah. So you get.
If I'm getting into the car.
Yeah. Are you going to drive in a particular place that drives you crazy, or just? No. Okay.
No, it's not any particular place. It's just.
Okay, so be in a driving position. So put your body in a way that you're going to be actually like you're driving, and you drive onto the whatever the highway or street You are,
Okay.
okay, and you see people doing those crazy things around you, and how does it make you feel?
Frustrated.
Okay, so tell me more about frustrated.
Well, I guess I got my learner's permit in Georgia, which, they just show you a couple pictures of, stop sign, yield sign. They ask you what it is, and then they say, here you go drive.
Mm-hmm.
And that scared the hell out of me. It really did. And I didn't even drive home. I didn't drive very much at all with my learner's permit until I went to Illinois. And when I got in school, it was a mandatory requirement that you go through a driving course, which takes like 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned how to drive on the simulators. I learned how to drive with people. And then like my final road test was actually in a minivan with 5 other people. And it was in the snow. And I did really well. I don't think I missed like 1 point out of, I forget what the scoring system is. But like I felt confident that I knew what I was doing behind the wheel
Mm-hmm.
at that point, that I was comfortable in driving. And, and then moving back down to Georgia, I realized that these people aren't given the proper tools to learn how to drive properly, really.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned that they've gotten a little better over the ages, but a lot of people were just given a little handwritten test and then they're like, okay, here's your license, have fun.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay,
it frustrates me that
so then what happens when you're on the road?
I get furious at people. Like, yeah, I can think about it today. We were on a 2-lane highway and there was probably a 10 to 15 car gap between me and the person in front of me, and someone pulled out from a dead stop right in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going 55 and they were going 0, or
Mm-hmm.
well, they started moving, so 5 miles per hour.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to slam on my brakes and attempt to look if I could change lanes, and they just got angry at me like I did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's those types of situations come up quite frequently.
Mm-hmm.
And that really pisses me off.
So people do crazy things.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like curious of like what goes through their mind when they look to the left and they see a car coming and it's fairly close and it's going fast and they're like, okay, it's safe to turn. Like it just doesn't make sense to me, and that like infuriates me.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then when you are furious, how does it affect your ability to drive or any other thing?
I go from being a defensive driver to being an aggressive driver.
Mm-hmm. And when you're an aggressive driver, what does that look like in your driving experience or in your driving behavior?
Less forgiving, less likely to let people in to my lane if they're trying to get over, or a little more impatient for people maybe who are turning. Like I'll just like try to jump lanes before they end up turning.
Okay.
Yeah, just less patience overall.
Okay. So what is your level of stress when you're driving?
It can vary, but I'd say between 6 and 7.
Okay.
At my worst, I've probably seen an 8.
Okay. So between 6 to 8. And how do you experience that stress? What happens to you physically, emotionally, and mentally?
emotionally, I'm charged. I want to relinquish myself of the area. I just don't want to be, if someone does something dumb, I want them to be out of my sight, because the stability of my mind won't be there until they're out, because I know my mind instantly knows they've already done one dumb thing. What can they do next?
Mm-hmm. So
So
you feel not only charged, but you feel threatened and on guard because they
yes.
can do some crazy thing, right? Again.
Yeah, typically my posture changes. I actually sit more upright and more in a more aggressive stance, I guess you'd say.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I got emotionally, physically, and then mentally. Yeah, mentally, I'm definitely more on guard. I definitely pay a little bit more attention to this person than is probably necessary.
Mm-hmm. So these are all measurements we are going to get back to eventually.
Okay.
All right. So when I take notes, I write things on this side of paper, and I pretty much write down what you said verbatim. And when we get to the end of the goal, I'll be writing things down on this side. So you'll have a side-by-side comparison about what's changed.
Okay.
And the difference between what we are going to be doing and conventional coaching is that when people say like, I get furious because people do crazy things, if we were working in a cognitive way, we would discuss it, design a strategy that will help you not get furious and so on. And then it would be up to you to do it. How do you think that would work? Would work if you were working that way?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm cognizant of it, and yeah,
Have you tried to control these reactions?
I have, but I feel like it's almost, like that can that we're talking about, right? So when I suppress the feelings, I take the little thing and
Right.
pushing it down, and then someone does the same thing again 5 miles away, and like it's just like, those trick cans when you're a kid and you open it and the little snake comes out. That's what it's like.
Right.
It's like, and then now it's
So,
the new one. Oh, and
right.
then everything.
And that's why we don't work cognitively, because you already know it's not going to work, or it hasn't worked, because that snake comes out of that box every time. And that's a really good description of how that works. And that's why we don't work cognitively. We are not going to discuss it. I'm not going to advise you. You're not going to develop a plan how to get better, because it makes no sense, because none of that is under control of your conscious mind. And that's very hard for people to accept until you get to the place where they realize that they can't control it. So that's why we are going to be talking to your inner intelligence. And we are going to be using a muscle response as a communication tool to find out from you what you need to work on. And my role is a facilitator. So I'm using the muscle response to get answers from your own nonverbal inner intelligence to tell us what's going to help you, what kind of activities and steps will help you get to the place where you can actually drive calmly. As a matter of fact, one of my clients is working on a similar goal because she was traumatized about driving some time ago, and she now wants to get back to driving. So we are working on a very similar goal, and she's almost ready to actually get in the car and drive. So I'll let you know, perhaps by the time we get together again, she will have another session and she may be already, in the car. But it's not it's not uncommon that people have worked on all kinds of goals. As a matter of fact, I worked on a driving issue with someone several years ago, a woman who was also traumatized for different reasons. And there were a lot of family history of problems and so on. But after a few sessions, she just got her driver's license and started to drive, and I never saw her again. So.
Yeah, I thought after my accident I would have a tougher time getting back into a car, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, it's great that you didn't, but let's make sure that you have your desired way of driving, which is to be calm and composed. The next step in this process is to identify the precise emotional issue that is blocking the goal. And we do that not by discussing it, because again, the answer is not in your conscious mind most of the time. I'm going to use a muscle response to go through a series of charts with different emotional issues. These charts have altogether around 400 different issues. And we are going to identify the specific issue that you need to work on or that needs to be addressed for you to get to your goal. And I usually name these charts out loud because it's pretty transparent what I'm working on. But in the first session, I very often don't do that because I want to avoid unnecessary input or information. These charts have names because they were taken from different sources, and that could be a little confusing. So I'm just going to go through those charts quietly, and you're going to see the response changing on the chart that has a stressful issue.
Okay.
So I'm naming the charts quietly, and you are just going to see the response. So this chart, we identified one chart. As you could see, the response changed. And that chart has 10 divisions. So let's see which division we need to look at. 1 through 4, 5 to 8, 5, 6, 7, 8. I usually go one further just to compare. So 7, it changed on 7. So I'm looking at this chart. So left side, right side. So these charts are organized in 2 sections, left and right. So left side, that changes the response, and right side. So we are looking at the left side. It has 13 statements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I'm not sure if this is accurate, but it may not have to do with driving. The issue that comes up is I release escaping from myself through distractions and activities. So
Can you repeat that one more time?
I release escaping from myself through distractions and activities. So that may not have to do with driving, but I wonder whether you can relate to that in some other parts of your life.
Yeah, I can.
You can?
Yeah.
So let's have you say that. So say, I release.
I release.
Escaping from myself.
Escaping from myself.
Through distractions and activities.
Through distractions and activities.
So the response is switched off. And I'm glad you can identify that it does play a role somewhere, because this is another shortcut that we have. Very often the issues are hidden. And by talking to your inner intelligence, we can find out very quickly what's actually going on. So let me write it down, and then I'll ask you, how do you experience that? So how do you experience that? How do you distract yourself, and what do you distract yourself from?
I'm thinking about it, and as I'm thinking about it, I feel like physical or manual labor. It could be cleaning, it could be fixing something around the house, could be something that I put off, cleaning the pool.
So these are the things that you use to distract yourself.
Yeah.
So with manual tasks or physical labor. And what do you think you're distracting yourself from?
Things that's popping in my head with something that I'm trying to avoid, answers, or some version of a truth.
When you are trying to avoid some truth?
Yeah, some kind of answer, some kind of truth, or some sort of something that I don't want to do.
And is it like particular areas of your life, or is in general?
I'd say in general. Yeah.
And can you see where it happens most often?
No.
Okay. So again, I'm writing it down on this side of the paper, and let's see how that's going to feel when we move further. Let's do one more activity, and then we'll stop till next time. Once we identified all the components that come into this goal of driving safely, driving to be calm and composed, the first thing we check whether you have any sabotaging beliefs. And if you do, there is like a specific way of clearing that. So is that okay with you? Should we check that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm still surrogating for you, and because we already set that up in the beginning, so until we stop and I say that we are no longer doing that, then I'm still surrogating for you. So let's get back to yes or no. The system needs to clear a sabotage for this goal. Is it from the usual chart? So there is a chart with over 200 statements. I'll go through numbers in brackets of 50 to see where we need to look. And again, it's a change of response as an indication of a bracket with a stressful issue. So 1 through 50 to 100 to 150 to 200. 150 to 200. Okay, so then I'm looking at that chart in that segment, 150 to 200. All right, so 150 to 160 to 170. Let's so 150 to 160, 160 to 170. So you can see how it changes the response on that bracket. So let's see what is in that bracket. One 161, 162, 163, 164, 165, 166, 160, 168, 169, 170, 168. I don't have to account for everything.
It's funny when you said 160, I for some reason just thought 168 in my head, and then when you got there,
there you go.
Yeah.
There's your intuition. You mentioned to me earlier that you're very intuitive. So are you aware of that you have to justify what you do and why you do it and how you do it and explain yourself?
I'm sorry, what was the question there?
The statement that comes up as a sabotage.
Okay.
Is I don't have to justify myself.
I don't have to?
I don't have to account for everything.
And this is a statement that's false?
Yes, so say I have to account for everything.
Yeah, I'd say that's fairly true.
So say that.
Say which part?
I have to account for everything.
I have to account for everything.
So that is strong. And say I don't have to account for everything.
I don't have to account for everything.
and that is switched off. So your system says it should be, your innate intelligence says it should be strong. I don't have to account for everything.
Mhm.
So where is that in your life? What's happening?
Well, that's everywhere.
So tell me more about it.
You're in bank. You're familiar. I'm a knowledge type. I am all about the details. So when I talk, yeah, I'm the epitome of a knowledge type. I mean, like, I don't know. I feel, as myself, if someone tells me an answer to something, I like to know where it came from, how they know it, etc. But in most cases, most people don't care, right? So when I say something in some, I try to cite the source of where I learned it, etc., etc. And sometimes it can, for most people, it's more than they care to know. They just want the answer, not where everything came from. So
Yeah, I know what you mean, because I used to do that also. I've read that in the book by so and so, which I came to because I was doing such and such. And,
yeah,
right, and people don't really need to hear that. So I learned to abbreviate that. But yeah, so your innate intelligence says that it is stressing your system, that you should not have to account for everything. Is that only in the sense of knowledge that you have to like justify everything, or it's in other areas as well?
I feel like that might stretch over into a few other areas of my life as well.
Mhm.
Maybe different. I mean, multiple aspects of my life, but not consistently in any given aspect, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
All right. So the way we release the sabotages, we combine three things. One thing is tapping on acupressure points. So you may be familiar with that because the emotional freedom technique developed from some aspects of specialized kinesiology. So a lot of people know that tapping on meridians does something. So meridians are lines of energy mapped out by Chinese medicine about 5,000 years ago. And one of the aspects of specialized kinesiology, which developed from chiropractic, is that the originators of the chiropractic field of applied kinesiology correlated muscles with meridians. So a lot of things that I do with muscles or emotions or other things have to do with meridians. And we often use tapping as a form of dispersing a blockage in a meridian. So that will be the first thing. I'll test which meridian you need to tap. We'll combine that with eye movements. So some people, again, in the past, discovered that if you move your eyes through the full range of motion, this accesses all different parts of your brain. So we'll be combining the tapping on the meridian with going through eye movements in both directions. And while you're doing that, you're going to be repeating a statement that will help your system let go of this or transform the sabotage into a balanced form. So it will no longer be a sabotage. So the first thing I need to do is I need to find out which points you need to tap. They are on the face. So I'm going to touch meridian points and see which one changes the response. So the most typical points to tap are on the stomach meridian, which are in the kind of a center of the eye socket. And to make it work a tiny bit better, you are also going to hold thumbs and ring fingers together. That says to your body or inner intelligence that you're working on an emotional issue. Then you hold the other two fingers together and you will be tapping like that. While you're doing that, I want you to imagine a big clock in front of you. So you'll be moving your eyes around the perimeter of this really large clock. And let's do it twice in each direction, very slowly. And while you're doing that, I'm going to also I'm going to give you a sentence to repeat that will include this sabotage.
Okay.
Okay, so go ahead and say, despite this reversal of attitude
Despite this reversal of attitude
about having to account for everything,
about having to account for everything,
I completely and profoundly
I completely and profoundly
love, appreciate, and respect myself.
love, appreciate, and respect myself.
Despite this reversal of attitude
Despite this reversal of attitude
about having to account for everything,
about having to account for everything,
I completely and profoundly
I completely and profoundly
love, appreciate, and respect myself.
love, appreciate, and respect myself.
Despite this reversal of attitude
Despite this reversal of attitude
about having to account for everything,
about having to account for everything,
I completely and profoundly
I completely and profoundly
love, appreciate, and respect myself.
love, appreciate, and respect myself.
Despite this reversal of attitude, we'll do it a couple more times.
Okay. Despite this
Reversal of attitude
reversal of attitude
about having to account for everything,
about having to account for everything,
I completely and profoundly
I completely and profoundly
love, appreciate, and respect myself.
love, appreciate, and respect myself.
Despite this reversal of attitude
Despite this reversal of attitude
about having to account for everything,
about having to account for everything,
I completely and profoundly
I completely and profoundly
love, appreciate, and respect myself.
love, appreciate, and respect myself.
Despite this reversal of attitude
Despite this reversal of attitude
about having to account for everything,
about having to account for everything,
I completely and profoundly
I completely and profoundly
love, appreciate, and respect myself.
love, appreciate, and respect myself.
Okay, so you can stop. I'm going to test the meridian points. And the points are now balanced or switched on. So the imbalance has been cleared by tapping.
Ooh. That was tough to do.
It's still easier than a lot of other things.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
So let's check the statement. So say, I have to account for everything.
I have to account for everything.
And now that's switched off. And say, I don't have to account for everything.
I don't have to account for everything.
And that's switched on. So that means that your inner energy is now going more towards the balanced statement. And that
Okay.
should change how you think and approach this issue. So these things integrate over time, but I habitually like to ask people, even as soon as we finish the activity, whether they feel a difference. So how are you going to approach things differently if you felt that you didn't have to account for everything?
I guess I'd give the most direct answer.
Okay. And then when you look at other areas where you felt this excessive accountability, what do you think will be different?
I guess giving the proper information at the proper time. So if someone asks a question, answering it and then not giving that accountability to behind it unless they directly request it.
Okay. So I'll give the right information at the right time, did you say?
Yeah.
Good. And what will that do for you?
Release the anxiety of having to make sure I'm always validated.
Right. Okay. All right. So we are going back to yes and no. So is the sabotage clear? Does the system need more balancing for this goal? Can we suspend this now? Okay, so we are no longer surrogating for Brent. I'm Paula here and now. Okay, I'm surrogating for Brent. No, this is how we break the surrogating. So I'm no longer picking up on you or where you are. So we put it on hold, which is suspended. And in next session, we'll do some more activities.
Okay.
So how do you feel now compared to how you felt when you started? This is also something I typically ask everybody.
I feel calm.
Mm-hmm. And how does that compare to how you felt when you started?
I guess there was like a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of excitement, you know, a little bit of
So how did you feel when you started, and how do you feel now?
yeah, that's what I was getting at. So a little nervous, a little excited, a little, I guess antsy would be a good word to use when we got on. And now I feel more calm, clear.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is pretty much how each session is going to go. There will be less talking in the beginning because I already explained the foundation and you've experienced what it looks like when I'm surrogating for you. So how do you feel about our session and this way of working?
It's different, right? I guess I didn't know what to expect. So that's kind of where the nervousness came from, but then excited at the opportunity that we get to do some things together and potentially get some really good get what you're doing out. So it isn't what you said earlier. You said a lot of people like this your brain upgrade program is and the kinesiologic testing, like it's not something that is very mainstream, but it's effective, and there is a huge potential to have this in a more range of places. So
Okay, great. I'm so glad you see the potential. So very good. Congratulations. Let's see, as I said, these things deepen over time. So I think you may notice that you feel less anxious about having to validate everything as we go on. And in the beginning of the next session, I'm going to ask you about what's been happening since we had our last session. That's my typical way of starting. And then we'll find out what else we need to do.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's awesome. Perfect.